All right, so today for yin, grab any props if you have them. If you don't, folded towels, blankets, pillows, anything that looks kind of like a block could be nice. We'll start with nothing. And I'll give you modifications for poses where we are using props. You can do something totally different. So you can come down onto your back or something similar just without the prop. And let's start in Supta Baddha Konasana. So bring the soles of the feet together and the knees wide. Couple different ways to do this. You can do this without props. You'll want to bring the feet away from you and just make a bigger diamond shape. You could put support underneath the knees. So almost everybody, their knees won't be touching the floor, and that's fine. It's just a nice hip opening no matter where you are. But that can create some pulling in the inner thighs, groin area, and we don't want to feel discomfort in that area. We just want to feel a nice opening, gently starting and gently build over time. So the way to create that pace that's slow, a slow opening, is to support the knees. So you could use blocks. Blankets are great too. So you could wedge some blankets or pillows underneath the knees. You could even go in more so that they're more underneath the thighs. So find a place where you can sustain the pose, knowing that you'll be here for a while, experiencing some stillness by lying down on your back and changing the shape of the legs. Arms could be down by your sides, palms facing up, or you can bring the hands on the body. I like left hand on the heart, right hand on the belly. Some people prefer two hands in one place, two hands on the heart, two hands on the belly. You could see what's happening in your own body and where you feel like you're getting the most comfort. And if you need support for your head, if it feels like it's too hard of a surface to have the head down, or you feel like the head's too far back, grab a blanket, put it underneath the head, get yourself comfortable. And as you start to settle in, maybe the eyes close. It's similar to the experience of getting into a warm bath. That same sense of calm and relaxation, or whatever the equivalent of that is for you. Our physical yoga practice can take us in so many different directions. It can build heat, it can get the heart rate going, and it can do the opposite. It can cool down the body, it can slow down the mind, it can reset the nervous system. Yin is a powerful practice, even though it's slow. You'll start to wiggle the fingers and the toes just to start to come back into the space that you're in. Bring the hands to the outer thighs, help the knees back together. And if you are using any props underneath the knees, you can set those off to the side. If you have anything underneath the head, you can set that off to the side. And then from here, you'll roll over to one side. use the hands to bring yourself up to seated. So this next pose, ideally you have 2 blocks. I'll give you other options if you don't. So if you have 2 blocks, you'll take 1 block on the medium height. It'll be behind you. So this is the lowest height. This is the medium height. This is the tallest height. We're going for medium. The other block will go on the tallest height behind that one. We're coming into a supported back bend. So if you have any issues with the back, maybe you go lower. You can do this closest one on the lowest height and then this one behind you on the medium height. And that's still a nice back bend. If you feel like you want more, then you can take it up. If you're comfortable with this shape, go a little bit higher, see what that feels like. So you'll turn around, hips are on the ground, feet are on the ground, and you start with the first block. So you come down onto your forearms. You try to get the bottom tips of your shoulder blades on this first block. Bottom tips of the shoulder blades are right about here. They're a lot lower than you think. And that's the part that we want to touch this bottom edge of the block. It lifts the center of the chest. As you bring the head back, you grab the other block on the tallest height or whatever height you have it on, and you rest the head there, making sure that the block is flat on the mat. Arms can come down by the sides. Start with the feet on the mat. It gives you an opportunity to just focus on the upper body. If you're good here, stay here. If you need to make adjustments, make some adjustments. I'll give you one other option. If you don't have blocks or this is just too much, you could just use the bolster back behind you or a pillow, whatever you have that's this shape. You could even make it a little bit higher and stack a folded blanket or towel on it. Same thing, feet on the ground, start to lie back, rest the head on the blanket bolster. Make sure the head's supported. So if it's not, then just adjust it. And I'm realizing that this blanket is too far forward. My head's not getting the support it needs. And then you just rest the arms out to the sides. We're all in some kind of supported back bend. If you're practicing with no props whatsoever, you can do a back bend where you're on your hands and knees and you bring your forearms down to the mat. Walk the forearms forward, forehead comes down, keep the thighs vertical, belly hugs in toward the lower back. So that's a good back bend with no props. If you're already in your supported back bend with props, you're staying there and you're starting to feel a deeper opening over time. Soles of the feet can remain on the mat. You also could extend the legs out in front of you and just let the legs be relaxed. So you can turn the toes out, let the legs relax. This deepens the intensity of the back bend. So if you feel like it's too much too soon, then walk the soles of the feet back to the mat and go back to where you were. You can always take breaks and back bends, especially if you're not used to doing them. It takes a while to get the body familiar with them, comfortable. And another good reason to have props is you can always adjust the height of your back bends. So it's just right for you. You've been here for a while. If you're doing the back bend with the 2 blocks underneath the upper back and the head, if you want to go deeper into the back bend and your body is calling you to do that, you could take the block underneath the head, lower it down 1 level so the 2 blocks are at the same height. And that's a much deeper back bend. If it's too much, just bring the head back up, lift the block up to where it was, and stay there. You don't want to feel whenever you have the head back, if it's a back bend or the head's down on the ground, you don't want to feel like the chin is the highest point of the face. You want to feel like the chin is just right in place. Your the tip of your nose is pointing more forward than up. So your nasal passageway is open, the throat's open. And if ever you feel like the chin is tipping too far up or back, then you elevate the head. And that doesn't happen with everyone. It's just our anatomy. So you might notice if you're in a yoga class and the teacher's constantly elevating your head, it's because they're seeing that your chin is too high and it's not allowing you to breathe the way easily. So you'll start to walk the feet back in, soles of the feet to the mat, bring the forearms and the hands down to the mat, lift the head up first, then bring yourself up onto the hands. So you're lifting yourself up and away from the props behind you. Set the props off to the side. If you're on hands and knees, you'll come back to seated and then just come down onto your back. So now you're lying flat, arms down by the sides, nothing underneath you. Extend the legs out in front of you. And we'll just lie here for about a minute. You can feel what the blocks did or what the props did underneath you. It's nice to settle to just feel that sensation of everything settling. You'll start to blink open the eyes, walk the feet in, soles of the feet are on the mat. You'll come back up if you have props. If you don't, if you have a bolster specifically or something like a bolster, if you don't have any props, just bring the knees over to the right, reach the left arm out to the left, and you're in your spinal twist. If you have props, you're coming up, you're grabbing your bolster, bringing it back behind you the long way. Bring the knees over to the right. So this right hip is up against the bolster. Knees are bent. You could take a blanket if you have one and put some padding between the legs. That can add some extra comfort. Bring the hands one on each side of the bolster. Lengthen the chest forward. Start to come down onto the forearms and the elbows. And then when you get down low enough, you can turn the head to one side. It doesn't really matter which, but if you turn to the right, it's a deeper opening on the neck, maybe the shoulders. If it's too much, turn the head to the left and rest the head down. But the side of the head is resting on the bolster. You can just let the arms be heavy, the body be heavy. And now that you've done the back bend, coming into a twist. And you'll start to lift yourself back up. If you're on your back, you can just switch over to the other side, or maybe take a counter pose, hugging the knees in. If you're on the bolster, bring the hands to the mat, start to lift yourself away from the bolster. Right hand comes over to the left. And then you turn around so that you're seated away from the bolster. If you're using a blanket, just bring it over to the left side. Come to a cross-legged seat, bolsters back behind you, sitting up tall with the hands on the knees. Just start to hinge forward with the chest, circling over to one side. And then on the exhale, round the spine. Inhale, reach forward. You're taking circles, going in one direction, doesn't matter which. You'll switch when we're about halfway and even things out. So inhaling forward, exhaling back. Breaths are long, so that keeps the movement slow. Let's do one more circle. Next time you're hovering the chest forward, pause and switch the direction of your circles. So if you're on your back, you can do the circles with the knees and just stay on your back, hugging the knees in toward the chest and then moving them away from you. Very similar. It's a nice way to counterpose with a deep twist. One more circle all the way around wherever you are. You'll come back up to seated, bring the soles of the feet to the mat. Now we bring the knees over to the left. So you're coming onto the left hip. If you like the padding between the knees, grab your blanket, bring it between the knees. And then face the bolster, whatever you're using. Start to come down onto the bolster. And then decide when you get down low enough, do you turn the head to the right or the left, wherever's easiest to rest the side of the head down on your prop. If you're on your back, you're just switching the twist, going in the opposite direction. And then once you're there, see where you can let go. So you're not driving yourself into the twist, you're just being in the twist. Nothing left to do but savoring the moment. Our class, our yin class, last time I was talking about the full moon and the new moon. So the full moon was last Friday. At the new moon, I set an intention to listen to the messages my body was giving me, and I wrote them down on my phone. So not technically writing, but in my notes app. And I came up with a big list at the end of the 2 weeks. And I try to put together some kind of theme, tie it all up and figure out, what is the overall theme. And for me, it was trying to spend more time savoring moments and activities, being present, and just having that thought sometimes, if you can have it in the moment, makes all the difference. Slowing yourself down, trying not to think about the next thing or something that already happened. You'll start to lift the head up, walk the hands in, bringing the torso up, setting the blanket off to the side, setting the bolster off to the side. You'll come to seated, turning to face forward. And we'll do something similar to the way we started, but a little bit different. So soles of the feet together, knees wide, but this time move the feet away from you. So you're not bringing the feet in toward the body, you're moving the feet away from you. So it's a big diamond shape, but with the legs. So feet are about as far away as you can get them, but the soles of the feet are still touching. You'll see if you go too far, the feet start coming apart. So make sure you've got the feet together. And then you'll slowly start to fold forward. You can round the spine, let the head and the neck go. Make sure your back's okay with this. So sometimes when we fold forward, it's too much pressure on the lower back. If you're finding that's happening for you, just come up a little bit. You don't have to go that far forward. If your lower back is fine, then you can start to explore going forward, letting the head and the neck go. And this is a hip opening. You're opening up the back side of the body at the same time because you're folding forward. And it's just a little bit different than the way we started. We did a similar shape lying on our back with Supta Baddha Konasana. But now we've just changed where the feet are. If you're used to doing a tighter version of this pose, meaning feet come in as close as you can to the body, what's the difference here for you? And we'll start to come back up to seated. And you can bring the knees back together. So bring the feet over to the left. So you're making a 90-degree angle with each leg or something kind of like that. So right leg is in a 90-degree angle. Maybe the foot's in line with the knee. It could be in toward the body. This left knee can go back. Maybe it's in line with the hip. If it's too much, you can bring it forward. So the closer the feet are into the body, the more gentle this is. The farther out the feet are, more like a 90-degree shape, and the feet are flexed, the more intense this is. That left hip, you're going to turn the chest to face forward for deer pose. That left hip's going to be a little bit lifted from the mat. You want to just press it down a tiny bit, just so there's a little bit of energy there. Sit up as tall as you can. pressing that outer right knee down and inner left knee down at the same time. So I use my fingertips so I can rise up through the chest, rise up through the crown of the head. If you're leaning over to the right, that's fine. Lean over as much as you need to so that your spine feels okay. It can be a lot, especially for this left QL, lower left side of the back. But we're focused on the external hip rotation on the right leg and the internal hip rotation of the left leg. So lower body joints. You can stay right here with the chest upright. If you've had enough, you can start to walk the torso forward and start to lean over the right leg. Just try not to let that inner left knee come up or the left hip come up too much. You can use blocks here too, so you can bring them underneath the arms, the forearms, like arm rests. That's kind of a nice way to be in the pose. You can bring the head down onto the blocks if it's low enough. Hands on the blocks. And if you're leaning forward, it's time to come back up, clear your mat. Just keep the blocks nearby if you need them. And then bring the feet. So you're in your deer shape wherever you are. Bring the feet in toward the body. Just feel how that feels. There's a big difference. This right knee still pointing forward, chest is still pointing forward. We'll take this back leg, the left leg, bring it all the way over the bottom leg. So you're coming into shoelace pose. Might not be as smooth of a transition. You can shift side to side a little bit so you feel like both sit bones are on the mat. And if it's too much for the bottom leg, it can extend out. You can also do this shape sitting up on a block. So if it feels like it's not happening with the hips down on the mat, prop the hips up. So now you're in shoelace pose, left knee on top of right knee. Feet can be in toward the body, they can be away from the body. Figure out where you're the most comfortable. Sitting up tall, start to fold forward over the legs. So you're putting weight on this hip opening when we do this, right? There isn't much weight on the hips with the legs folded this way. And once you start to bring the chest down toward the legs, you start to apply some pressure. So it's up to you how much of that you do. Please listen to the messages you're receiving from your body. If you want to use blocks, you could use them underneath the forehead. We're always trying to touch the forehead on something when we can in shapes because that's what helps us start to relax. And in hip openings, really anywhere in the body, once the body starts to calm, that's when the healing starts to happen. The openings start to become deeper. When you're not trying to control it and you're just allowing it to go where it needs to go. And you'll come back up to seated if you have blocks in front of you, setting those off to the side. Bring the hands back behind you. Extend the bottom leg and then the top leg. Bring the soles of the feet in so they're touching the mat, and then turn to the side of the mat. So facing the side, hands are back behind you, feet wide. Move the knees side to side like windshield wipers. So you're going side to side. You can play with how deep the knees go down to the ground when you go to each side. You're fairly open, especially on one side because we've just done half. We'll finish this up. So then you'll bring both knees over to the left. So both knees are going over to the left. Bring that right hand forward so that and you're facing the other edge of the mat. So right hand's forward, chest is lifted. You could be leaning over to the left. That's fine, but you're trying to get upright. Just listen to your body. Left knee in front of the left hip. Maybe right knee in line with the right hip. It might be more forward. That's fine. Feet could be in a flexed, or they could be in close to the body. You got to find a place where you can be in the shape without a struggle. Too much of a struggle. Some of us have to put a little bit more focus and concentration into this. So starting upright with the chest, use the fingertips, close the eyes if it helps you slow down a little bit and just be in the shape. If you need to keep the eyes open, look down the bridge of the nose and try not to move the eyes around. That's when the thoughts start to swirl. And that doesn't calm the body. And that outer left knee is pressing down, inner right knee pressing down lightly, not as hard as you can. Right hip will naturally be lifted away from the mat, but you're working to lower it instead of lifting it. Stay here if you feel comfortable keeping the chest up, or start to walk the hands forward, maybe folding over the left leg. Trying not to let that right hip lift as you go forward or the knees away from the mat. You can let the head and the neck go if you're folding forward. And if you're leaning forward over the left leg, walk yourself back in, bringing the chest upright. So if you have more space to bring the feet in toward the body, bring them in toward the body. Keep the chest pointing forward. And then you can play with your hip mobility, trying to get this right leg, right knee over the left without leaning too far over to the left. So right knee on top of the left knee. Don't worry if you had to use your hands. Try to get even on the sit bones. It's really important to have both sit bones down on the ground and you're not sitting on the feet. So right knee on top of the left, Feet could be in toward the body, they could be away from the body. You find where you're most comfortable, and you could have the hips elevated on a bolster or a block. From here, fold forward, take your time with this. Bottom leg can extend out, so you just do half shoelace. Full shoelace is both legs folded, right leg on top of the left. And you might find that you can go deeper or not as deep on this side. That's fine. Just try to find a similar sensation in the lower body joints opening. Maybe rest the head on something if you have props. No big deal if you don't. You'll start to lift the head back up. Coming up to seated, leave the legs for now. Bring the hands back behind you so you're leaning back. Extend the bottom leg, then the top leg, and bring the soles of the feet to the mat. Turn to the side of the mat, same side you were on before. Feet wide, knees bent, and move the knees side to side. So now maybe feeling a little bit more even in the hips and the lower body joints than you did before when we were doing windshield wipers. There's a lot of hip opening. You'll come back to seated facing the front of the mat, legs out in front of you, but keep the soles of the feet on the mat. Maybe have a blanket or bolster nearby. And let's start by clasping opposite elbows underneath the knees. So you'll have to have your legs bent a lot, feet on the mat. You can let the head and the neck go. So chest is completely on the thighs. If it's not, bring the knees in more until you can get the chest to totally rest on the thighs. So see if you can do that. If it's still not happening, that's where you can use a block, or I mean a bolster, blanket, something, so that you can get the chest completely on the thighs. Head and neck can release. So you're not really worried about how straight the legs are, but more about the torso connecting and resting on the thighs. And this should feel like a nice opening in the back. The back should feel like it's spreading. And sometimes some of us naturally want to bring the shoulders up toward the ears. Make sure you're not doing that. That takes away space from your neck. You want the neck to feel like it has all the room it needs. If you feel like you want a little bit more, you could extend the feet out in front of you just a little bit. Just slide them out. See, stay right where you start feeling a difference. So maybe you can't really see a difference, but you can feel one. And if you're clasping opposite elbows, switch the grip. So other forearm on top. Maybe noticing this slight difference in sensation when you do that. You can stay where you are with the legs. If you feel like you want to let the feet go out a little bit more, you can do that. Try to keep the chest on the thighs though. Once that separation happens, it's a different shape. And you'll start to lift the head, bring the hands down to the mat, gently push yourself back up to seated. Once you get to seated, soles of the feet are on the mat. You'll scoot your hips forward, come down onto your back. Lie flat for a moment. We're not coming into Shavasana, but like Shavasana. So feet are a little bit wider than hip width distance apart. Reach the arms overhead. You can find a bit of a stretch here. So you're stretching the arms, stretching the legs, clasp opposite elbows overhead. Just let the arms rest overhead. Take the right foot, hook it on top of the left foot. If the left foot's too far over to the left, bring the legs more toward the center. So legs are long, crossing the feet at the ankles. Lift the upper body up over to the left just a little bit. So you can get both shoulder blades still down on the mat, both hips down on the mat. Coming into banana. Close the eyes. I always find that this pose usually comes at the beginning of a sequence or at the end of a sequence, for me anyway, because it's a nice way to open up the body and it's a nice way to experience all of the opening in the body at the end of your practice. And with the feet hooked, you can let go of the muscles in the legs. They won't go anywhere. Same thing with the arms. See if you can let the shoulders relax. And you'll blink open the eyes, unhook the feet, bring the upper body back to center. Remember which forearm is on top. Stretch the arms out, stretch the legs out. Switch the grip of the forearms, other forearm on top. Left foot on top of right foot, hooking the ankles. Lift the upper body up, bring it up and over to the right, just a little bit. It's not as far as you can go. Make sure both shoulder blades are touching down on the mat, both hips are touching down on the mat. Close the eyes if you'd like. Start to settle in. There's some effort to get into this shape. So if you're still using effort to be in this shape, see where you can ease up. And you'll bring the upper body back to center, unhook the feet, reach the arms overhead, stretch out through the legs, and bring the arms down by the sides, palms turned to face up. Lift the chest up so you can get the shoulder blades underneath you. If you need to do the same thing with the hips to get the tailbone to point down toward the heels, do that. Your feet and legs are already right where they need to be. Toes are turned out, eyes closed. Coming into Shavasana. Finding how much more comfortable lying flat is after going through a series of postures. Let's wiggle the fingers and the toes, starting to find some movement in the body again. Walk the feet in, bending the knees. Reach the right arm overhead. Roll over to your right side. Left arm, just rest down on the side of the body. Left hand on the hip. Bring the left hand to the floor in front of you. Start to press yourself up to seated, keeping the head low the whole time until you find that comfortable seat. Start to lift the chest, then bring the head up. It's the last to come up. Gaze is still forward with the eyes closed. Bring the hands together in front of you. Thumbs to the sternum. Bow the head slightly. Take a moment to close your practice. Honor and acknowledge your heart and spirit, as well as everyone around you. Bring the head back up. Blink open the eyes. Namaste. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.